Mr. Gutierrez,
ladies and gentlemen in the audience and the viewing land. First of all, he tells you that he's not going to renegotiate because it might disrupt the retiree and other government employees. Well, let me tell you this and ask you this, Senator. The last signed contract before 2011 was 2008. Your company took 2009 and 2010, and nobody signed that contract. Nobody, because Calvo Select Care wanted a provision in there that the Attorney General said was illegal. It was never signed. And guess what? The rates of 2009 and the rates of 2010 went in without a signature on that contract, when in fact the people of Guam should only be paying the last contract of 2008. And you should roll it back. So no one is going to be disrupted. It did not get disrupted for 2 years when there was no contract. Understand that? It never got disrupted.
Yeah, thank you. You have about a minute. You have about a minute, Mr. Calvo.
And I do understand it, Mr. Gutierrez. And I guess your partner did not make you aware of a bill that he voted for and I voted for. In fact, it was introduced by the Democratic majority that mandated a governor has to sign on contracts. And it happened this year. It didn't happen in 2008, and it didn't happen in 2009. And if Governor Camacho did not sign that contract, I go back to that retiree being in a situation where his dialysis would be interrupted, or those, and there are many people here, we all have family members that have need of health care. There would have been a disruption that would be an endangerment to the government of Guam workers and retirees. I will never do that. I will never endanger their lives. Never.
All right, thank you, Mr. Calvo.
You know what's interesting here, Patty? You know, I'm going to have to stand up and defend myself. Not only did Governor Gutierrez highlight that perhaps there was a slight oversight on my part with regards to the overall process, because our opponents know by law we are restricted from sitting in that negotiating table. All the members of that negotiation team have to sign a non-disclosure statement. Guess what? Only after the chief executive signed a memorandum that allowed for the release of that information publicly, and only after my office got repeated calls from our people saying the rates are too exorbitant, I cannot afford it. That's when we brought up that issue, not only to the chief executive's office, not only to the director of administration, not only to the health insurance commissioner over Reverend Tax, but also the Health and Human Services Division. You know, I think it's extremely, to the people of Guam, I think it's extremely unfortunate to know that our opposition, I have no idea what island he's living in. When you have insurance rates that increase from 90 to 287% on the backs of our public employees, on the backs of our retirees, you're not going to renegotiate? To me, that just does not make any sense. Guess what? A lot of our people have had to drop their health insurance, or they have had to make the difficult decision of, am I going to provide health care insurance coverage to my family, or am I going to put food on the table, or am I going to pay my mortgage, or am I going to pay other obligations that my family has? That's the biggest challenge. You know, when it started on October 1st, and when we heard the cries and the pleas of many of our people, I am telling you, that's what leadership is all about. It's listening to the concerns and listening to the voice of your people and making sure that you respond accordingly. And in this particular case, right after Governor Gutierrez and Frank Alcon Jr. are sworn in on January 3rd, we're going to make sure that we sit down at that negotiating table, we look out for the welfare of the people of Guam, and no business but the welfare of all the people of Guam.
All right, listen, Senator, just a moment. Let me just make a point. It appears that the whole idea of having a calm view type, I don't know what we were thinking. This is not the view, apparently. And Senator Calvo just turned to me and said, wow, this is really fun. All right, so exciting. So apparently we want to scrap I have no problem with the good scrap, because we've got 2 good scrappers, 4 good scrappers here. So this is what we're going to do. I've sort of estimated the time that you have each had an opportunity, and it's between 2.5 and 3 minutes. I'm not sure, Ms. Uggan, if your question was answered. You might have to call their offices and ask for the answer, but bear with them because they're real kind of a hot mess at the moment. But we're going to rope it in. We're giving about 2 minutes, 2.5, if you don't mind. Mr. Tenorio, thank you.
I don't even need that long.
Yeah.
You know, Senator Uggan just said he has no idea about what island we live on. We live on the island of Guam, the island where Senator Uggan was elected, and he also had no idea about other things, clearly, because he didn't attend the negotiations for the government of Guam when he should have, like his successor did, or his predecessor, like Simon Sanchez, when he was in charge of health care. He also, like Lulian Guerrero, should have attended like Lulian Guerrero when she was a senator in negotiations. Ladies and gentlemen, you obviously have no idea when you're not there. Frank Uggan didn't attend the negotiations and therefore didn't make sure that the government contribution amount stayed where it was. That's why there's more money coming out of your check, not because of all the claims of our opponents. Ladies and gentlemen, the reality is Senator Uggan was elected. He failed to make sure to attend those negotiations. He failed to make sure he represents the interests of the government of Guam, retiree and employees, and that's why he has no idea. Thank you.
Okay. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
It's kind of interesting that my opponent says I did not attend. But I remember one legislature where the gubernatorial representative.
Mr. Uggan, we're going to move on to the next question if you don't mind. We're going to move on to the next question.
But he made direct remarks about myself.
I'm sorry?
That individual that was appointed on behalf of the employees of the legislature was the executive director appointed by the Speaker of the Guam legislature.
Point taken, but we're moving
not an incumbent senator.
We're moving on to the next question, and here is the next question.